Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and this one is killer. It's with Michael Letchworth from Sam Jones BBQ. He's partners with Sam Jones on Sam Jones BBQ in Winterville and Sam Jones BBQ in Raleigh, North Carolina. Michael did for us two amazing tours, like just spectacular tours. If you're ever curious about seeing the ins and outs of this operation, the literal ins and outs of this operation, there's links below. Please check them out. I know you're going to love them. They're super intriguing, super detailed about all the processes of the cooking the hogs and back of the house, and it's spectacular. So after those, and after I got to know him a little more, I realized how great a person he was, how much history he has with Sam Jones and with Skylight Inn and the family and working with them. And so I just knew that there was a great story to tell, and this interview is spectacular. I'm not going to go too much into it, but we learn a lot about his path, how he met Sam Jones, and he refers to him as Samuel when he talks about him. But you find out how they met, how their friendship grew, how this all came about. I can't thank him enough for taking the time. He's an extremely busy guy. I'm honored that he shared his story. So sit back, relax, enjoy this, and be sure to visit your local barbecue joint. Good evening, Michael. How you doing?
Going good, buddy.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you. First off, thank you. I'll put links below to the tours. Both those tours were really great, and tours of the Raleigh location as well as the Winterville location. Thank you for taking that time because it's really special when you get a tour like that.
Yeah, it's cool to share, and I quickly learned the value of a Bluetooth microphone after that first one.
I think a lot of people have learned that. It's
I
funny.
apologize for the quality of the first one, but I'm happy to show everybody around and thankful for the
uh,
opportunity to be here tonight.
and we'll get into the kind of not the tours but those locations. But I want to know, like, because I want to get your background because a lot of people know about Sam. Did
Yeah,
you grow up in North Carolina, and what was your path originally?
yeah. So my parents lived about, I don't know, maybe a mile, 2 miles down the road from Samuel's family, and we're out in the country, and there's creek paths that are connected essentially. And so I would ride my four wheeler when I was in middle school up and down the creek path. I had a buddy who actually lived two doors down from Samuel. And so I'd always be taking my four wheeler to go to my buddy's house, and we'd just be riding. And Samuel and his friends, where the lateral ditches meet that main creek path, him and his buddies would go out there and have like bonfires and stuff like that on the weekends. And so it just so happened one day when I was riding, he was out there like digging out the hole where the firewood was. And so I stopped and started talking to him. And through, just quick conversation, we put the two and two together. His dad is a preacher, and my dad was in the funeral business. And so we he knew my family. Samuel already knew my family, but then was telling me how his dad and my dad were buddies. And so that kind of started it off. And he was like, anytime you want to ride or you see us riding, you're welcome to stop by. I would do that. I would show up at his house, and I was so timid. I would like just wait for him and his, because I didn't have their cell phone numbers at the time, and I would just wait until I saw them show up, and then I would like go and hang out with them and stuff. I was 13, I think, at the time. I was in eighth grade.
Okay.
So that kind of slowly, I started kind of spending a little bit more time with them and going on four-wheeler rides with them, when it snowed. And we kind of had this tradition, like one night of the weekend, we would go have a fire at that creek. And then the other night of the weekend, we would go off the creek paths and go mudding and that kind of thing. So with increased time of spending time with Samuel and his friends, I really kind of started looking up to them. And they were a good group of guys. They were, clean fun. And so I was 13 hanging out with 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. Um, and they all kind of treated me like a little brother. And so naturally, I just wanted to do whatever they were doing. And so those guys were on the fire department. So as soon as I turned 16, I was on the fire department
Oh,
also. But I started working at Skylight Inn officially, and I had my license. But prior to that, I would go and help them, you know. So Christmas Eve was always a really, really big day for Skylight Inn. And back then, Skylight didn't cook like consistent sized hogs. So there may be like some 112-pound hogs and 170-pound hogs.
whoa.
But nonetheless, on Christmas Eve, back in those days, they were cooking 20 to 24 hogs just for Christmas Eve. And so to handle that load, and it wasn't a whole lot of sandwiches and small trays and medium trays. On that day, it was people coming in buying 5 pound buckets or 10 pound buckets and different things like that. So what we would do is like a friend group is all just Christmas Eve. We would show up at Skylight and we'd have like a second chopping table. And so we may be chopping barbecue or bringing meat in or just doing whatever to help. But it was almost just like hanging out as anything. I started actually working for one of Samuel's friends and our friends in that same friend group that had just started a lawn care company. So I was the weed eater man. But what had happened was Samuel's grandfather had exited the business due to sickness, and there was some gaps there and needed some help working. And so Samuel would kind of like steal me on Saturdays after I got done mowing grass, or he would hit them up and say, do you really need Michael today, or can he come work at the store? And so that's kind of how I really got my official start at Skylight Inn. And then that turned into me realizing that like after school in the wintertime when it was dark, I could still work and earn money. When it was raining outside, I could still work and earn money. So that was why I kind of went all in on Skylight Inn. And so that was technically 2003. I was in 10th grade. And so I would work after school every day and then on Saturdays. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't even remember if I got a day off during the week or not. Um, but I
So it was
did
kind
that
of
for,
like it was very organic that it happened. It just
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So like this, none of this was because like, oh my God, I love barbecue or because my dad was in the barbecue. None of this had
yeah.
anything to do with a passion for barbecue. Um, and I don't know that a passion for barbecue really started for probably 10 more years. But I did that through high school. I did that through the majority of my college. I went to the community college here in town for like residential construction. And I did quit working at Skylight for one little stint to go do like some trim, to work in a trim business. Uh, Came back to Skylight and I worked there until I graduated East Carolina with a construction management degree. And when I did that,
So that was the path that you thought you were going on, construction.
yeah. And like so the whole time working at Skylight Inn, people, it was just like this the stepping stone burger, it was just I viewed working in the restaurant as like being the burger flipper that people put, like
Hmm.
if you were doing that, then you gave up or it wasn't good enough or whatever. And unfortunately, that was my mindset at the time. It was time for me to move on. And then, so I graduated in 2010, quit in 2010. And Samuel in 2008 had started getting some attention through the SFA, and things had kind of been rekindled again. Skylight Inn got a lot of attention back in the late 70s, early 80s. But then once Mr. Pete died in 2006, which so Pete was Samuel's granddad for anybody who doesn't know it. And
Yeah.
oftentimes before really this SFA film came out, identifying that restaurant as Skylight Inn, it had always officially been Skylight Inn, but it had always gone by Pete Jones BBQ, and
Ah.
it was just known as Pete Jones locally and regionally. But when Mr. Pete passed away, even though he hadn't been in the business for a few years, people just started, oh, it ain't the same since Pete's died. Or once Mr. Pete died, people just assumed things had changed or it wasn't anymore. So the business kind of took a dip a little bit. But in 2008, kind of the wheels kind of started turning again. And that was when Samuel was kind of getting some of these opportunities to go around and travel. And I was still, even though I was working somewhere else, I would still help on catering or go do a festival or go do something. But it wasn't until 2013, in February of 2013, on the back end of him being on Barbecue Pitmasters for the first time, the other folks that was he was on the show with came together to do like a little charity event. I went, I helped cook the pig, served the pig, and I kind of was shown a different side of the restaurant deal. And it was then where it kind of started to click to me that it was more than just kind of like a job. I was representing a family tradition and I was representing a family who has made a mark on barbecue, but in our community. And it was just bigger than barbecue and it was bigger than us. So I started showing interest in wanting to come back into that. And I went to Samuel when we got back from that weekend trip and just said, hey, man, if there's ever a way that I can make a living, I'd be interested in coming back into the barbecue business. And at the time, it really wasn't a whole lot, but he told me he couldn't make it work. And so that is what it is. I just kept kicking the can down the road doing the construction thing.
And when
And
you say SFA, for people that might know, that's Southern Foodways Alliance, right?
Southern Foodways Alliance, yep. And so the SFA, back when during Charleston Food and Wine, they used to do a pitmaster dinner. And Samuel was asked to do that in 2010 or 11. And that was what was kind of a breaking point in some relationships that kind of ended up shaping our future.
Hmm.
So now he was just like in this club, if you will, of restaurateurs and people in the food industry that saw the value and placed importance on traditional foodways and supported it. So as I always tell these timelines, I'm bouncing back and forth because
That's
I
okay. No,
forget
this is good. People, it's
and kind of relates back. But so we're jumping back in. We're 2013. I'd kind of showed my interest through that SFA and that dinner. Samuel had gotten to be friends with a gentleman named Nick Bahakis. Nick Bahakis started, him and his father had Jim and Nick's barbecue.
mhm.
I think it started in 1986 in the Birmingham area. By this time, when we're talking about this, 2013, I think they had like 34 restaurants, maybe 37. I can't remember. But he was kind of encouraging Samuel to, because Samuel didn't physically have any ownership of Skylight Inn. He had become the face of Skylight Inn. He was building that brand, but he didn't have any true equity.
I've always
And after,
wondered how
yeah,
that.
and so, he had a daughter, and the future became a little bit more, planning for the future had a little bit more importance to it. And so Nick was like, you should open up your own thing. And there's, that's a story in itself. But in that, Samuel called me up one day and asked me if I'd wanted to possibly come work there. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll come back and do that. Because to me, it was my way back, and that was that opportunity that I'd just been asking for. And then through some more conversations with Nick, he was like, but you got to find somebody to help you run that place. You got to have somebody boots on the ground that has some equity and, you know, can watch your back so you can still be out building this brand and that's going to benefit you and Skylight still. Because never in any of this did we want it to be a hard divide. I know sometimes in barbecue and in families in barbecue, things can get sour. And
Yeah.
this was never ever one of those deals. So it was like this was the traditional way, and this is kind of the evolution of that. And he was going to, represent both. And so thankfully he came to me and said, hey, look, I've been advised to try to bring a partner into this whole deal, and I wouldn't feel right if I didn't offer it to you first. And I said yes. I wasn't quite sure what it all meant and how, I would think I was 26 at the time, how, that was going to be financed or what that looked like. But we started the process. I said yes. I quit my job in February of 2015, and we opened. As a matter of fact, yesterday was our 9-year anniversary. So
Yeah, I saw that.
November 10th, 2015, we opened the doors. And the goal with Sam Jones BBQ was to just continue to serve the chopped barbecue, coleslaw, and cornbread that Skylight Inn always had. And even early days, when we were planning on opening this other restaurant, I mean, I've got upstairs in the hallway of my home, I've got some sketches of renderings of uh, the floor plan that we ended up choosing now. But by then, we hadn't decided on what we were going to call this restaurant. It says Skylight Inn 2 at the bottom, and
That's cool to see.
we didn't know what we were going to do. But we ultimately decided that we didn't want to cause confusion by serving a modified menu from what Skylight was, and it'd be which one are you going to? But we knew we needed to keep that, as it was Pete Jones at one time and the Jones family had Skylight in, we knew we needed to have Sam Jones's name on it to tie it all together. And so we did that. And so we had that barbecue, we had the coleslaw, we had the cornbread, but we wanted to do like ribs and chicken and turkey breast and other sides. And then, Nick strongly advised us, hey man, you've got to eliminate that veto vote in the car on the way to dinner and serve the salad. We've got a baked potato. We've got some fried catfish. We've got chicken tenders. So we've got something that the whole family can at least.
A hamburger if you needed
Yeah,
that.
we
Yeah.
got a cheeseburger on there, and that cheeseburger. So when Skylight Inn opened up in 1947, it wasn't just strictly barbecue. It
Oh,
was they had hot dogs, they had hamburgers, they sold beer. So Pete's family had a couple of barbecue places already in town that he had grown up working at. And so when he moved across town and did his own thing, he was trying to set himself apart from what they were doing.
oh.
So he had all these other things. I do not know the date that they transitioned to being just the barbecue cornbread and coleslaw.
But
So
can you take a step back, Nick? Because there's
yeah.
a lot of people, myself included. I've never been to Skylight. Or I've never
Mhm.
been to Pete Jones. What is the menu really pared down? Because I thought that it was like
Yeah.
there's not that much offering, or is there more
Yeah,
to
no,
they
I'm
offer
glad you
more
asked.
than
That kind of gives me a segue into the rest of the menu piece.
yeah.
So Skylight Inn currently is has modified a little bit, but at this time and up until when I left, you could get a chopped barbecue sandwich on a white bun, or you could get a small, medium, or large tray. That was a little red plaid tray of barbecue, a flat piece of cornbread, and a tray of coleslaw. There was no other side offerings, no other meat offerings. It was how much of what you wanted, not necessarily what you wanted. Now you could buy a pound of barbecue also,
Mhm.
but if you got Skylight in to cater for you though, and this has been this was this way for a long time, you could get a barbecue chicken, and their barbecue chicken is cooked on the pits, no seasoning at all, no salt, no pepper, just the chicken put on the pits, and then there is a barbecue sauce that they make that's very vinegar based, but not vinegar based like Eastern North Carolina barbecue vinegar based. I
Oh,
mean, there's like ketchup, but it's a vinegary barbecue sauce, and then once those chickens came off the pit, we then poured that simmering barbecue sauce over the chickens, and that's how and where it was held until the time of service. Um, they offered baked beans and they offered potato salad as options for sides also. So we adopted the baked beans and the potato salad when we opened Sam Jones BBQ. We just do a chicken that has our barbecue rub on it and is smoked. We don't do their style chicken. Now Skylight, if you go there today, you can get that chicken, you can get the baked beans and the potato
oh,
salad still. So the menu's a little bit more broad now. Things are still close to the same, as far as appearance when you go in Skylight. Used to, when you walked in Skylight, there was tables in the front dining room, and I don't believe since COVID they have those tables in there.
oh.
They've got a couple like with some sauce and stuff on them, but going to Skylight still kind of like traveling back in time. You've got the pit houses and those things, and as there's been some fires and some pits falling apart, so things have kind of are slowly evolving, but not because they're trying to.
So when did it open? You said 47?
Hmm.
So what is that in my mouth? I'm
Yeah,
trying to figure out.
1947. So like 77 years. I gave a speech a few weeks ago and I had it down to the days. But yeah, 77 years. It was
77
July
years.
July 8th, 1947.
There's not many things in general or restaurants in general that have survived that long, even though it's evolved a little bit. That's interesting. It makes sense that they would have had hot dogs and hamburgers. I always wondered too, this is so off topic, but how come McDonald's never has hot dogs? Like I was thinking that would be such an easy thing,
Yeah.
especially for kids and stuff, but I don't know, maybe
Well, let me speak on something else. You're talking about like such a long time ago. So I was just in Charleston this weekend cooking at a charity event and was beside the Big Bob Gibson guys. And I was curious when their business started, and they were 1925.
oh yeah.
But for us, there's a lot of barbecue places here in North Carolina, like the OG traditional places. When you look at when they were started, it's all like 1946, 1947. And so I was on a panel at a barbecue class at NC State University, and the guys from Red Bridges Barbecue were
Yeah,
there. And I think
Natalie
they
and
46. It was they weren't able to make it, but it was another guy, last name of Bridges, was there.
oh
It just happens to work there and been around the family forever.
yeah.
And so finally, I leaned down. And I was like, "Hey, man, like when y'all started, like, did y'all know what we were doing across the state, or was it like because it wasn't like you check Instagram and you're like, oh damn, I'm gonna cook some barbecue too." It was so organic. It was like everybody was just doing their thing, and I don't know if that relates to
The
the end
war?
of World War II or how that works. People coming
Yeah.
home to businesses, but um, it's just kind of cool now to kind of be. I've been thinking about it a lot, and the fact that Samuel didn't have a son. Bruce, Samuel's dad, does have two daughters, but there's nobody else carrying on the Jones family name. And when you talk about the other side of that family, the Dennis family, that is part of that lineage of barbecue in our area. There's no males in that family carrying on the name.
Wow.
So I've kind of recently been thinking about, I'm not trying to place myself into any of this family history by any means, but I'm 37 years old and I've been working in that business and around it for the last 21 years. But so I kind of take somewhat of responsibility of trying to make sure this tradition continues. I'm not saying that Samuel's not doing that. I'm not, what I'm saying, but
Oh
like
yeah.
I take a responsibility in saying, okay, this is important to make sure this keeps going
Hmm.
and teaching those food ways. If anything, it's just to be somebody to know how to do it and continue to be able to speak on it.
Well, and that's also you have that knowledge, and that's what a lot of people will gain from this interview or other interviews you've done because the you have like a firsthand view. You were there during this time, even though you dotted around, you did your stuff, but you have firsthand
And
knowledge.
I guess that's the biggest piece of the responsibility that like I identify. I don't have the family name, but I was there. Like I've been there
Yeah.
along the way. There's nobody else.
Hmm.
There's nobody else that has been in it as long as I have.
And it's just by you happening to go come by those guys that were and them taking you under their wing if they were like jerky kids or like sometimes the older kids don't want to hang out with the younger kid. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so crazy when you look back of, when that moment was and what if you hadn't have done that day or what if this hadn't have happened?
Yeah.
I often wonder like if I'd never, I'd gone and done that festival and then came back and what if I'd never gone and said, hey, I'd like to be back in this? Would
Hmm.
have Samuel have ever even considered when it came time to pick somebody and to try to go through that process?
That is interesting, and it gives you an opportunity to do things that Sam can't do because you have that knowledge. Like you can kind of split off if there's things that they want Sam Jones to be at, then but it's also you have that knowledge. You could sit in on panels and do things. That's great.
Yeah, and and although that knowledge has kind of always existed, I don't know that I've always had. Uh, I feel like I've always kind of been mature, but like I've never felt more ready than here in the recent, year or two to really to be a piece of that. I felt like I've needed to mature through certain avenues that even at times looking back, I thought I was ready and could have been that person, but I think it takes some time and some tenure. I've had to learn some lessons and to get some experience. I can, of course, can speak on my past and what I know, but being able to mentally piece it all together and understand some of those stepping stones and milestones throughout history is kind of easier now.
Yeah. And it's also, yeah, even though there's like the Robert Moss and John T. Edge, and there's people that are documenting this world, the Southern barbecue world in general is still kind of mysterious to a lot of people. Daniel Vaughn has been really, that Texas Texas Monthly has put a lot of effort into really gaining a foothold on the knowledge, like of, he
Yeah.
spread but it seems like, and even Daniel worked with Sam on his book, but it seems that, I don't know. There's still like because the reason why I fell in love with barbecue. I'm from Los Angeles. I always loved meat. My dad was cooking steaks and having scotch or whatever. It was just a fun opportunity to be outside with my dad cooking steaks. And we went to some barbecue places, had ribs. Ribs were generally not cooked any of the way that anyone I've ever talked to in the barbecue really cooks them. They're just maybe boiled. Who knows what they did? But when I used to go to North Carolina twice a year. I went to High Point because my dad was in the furniture business, and I partnered with him. And so we went to the furniture market, and it's a big deal for people that don't know. You go twice a year, and it has all the different furniture manufacturers, and a big rollout. Well, that's where people realize my love for barbecue, and someone said, "Hey, do you want to go to Lexington Barbecue?" And that was the first when I first went there. I was like, "Wait a second, this is completely just the atmosphere, the pits." The way that they serve food and then the sweet tea, and it was really sweet tea. It was just like I had never had sweet tea in my life before. And hush puppies, and then we went to Sammy's and did like some went to little places, but I started to realize like you could be driving down just the middle of the highway and there's a little barbecue place that I don't know if those all still exist. This was, you know, 18 years ago, 17 years ago, but they've not, but it's just there are lots of little barbecue places all around the South.
There was, and they've slowly started falling off, but I do feel like there's been a slight resurgence, as, you used to hear about barbecue places closing. Now, you hear more about people opening.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. But you know what? I've never had Lexington style barbecue ever.
You haven't? Oh, you should. Maybe you and I could go someday. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And like I was kind of touching on before, until I really got immersed into the Jones family and their food ways, me or anybody else in my family were never like food people or anything like that. Now, I took a liking back when my grandfather died when I was like 8 or 9, and so I had to start staying with my grandma during the summer times, and she just sat in the living room and watched soap operas like all day long. And it was from soap operas to game shows or whatever. Like she was not concerned with entertaining me at all. So I had to entertain myself. And so I spent 2 summers there completely just being engulfed by Emerald Ghazi, Mario Batali on Food Network. And then it was pop-up video on VH1 and, some of
Oh, I
those
miss those so much.
on MTV and stuff. So it was MTV, VH1, and Food Network was all I watched. And I guess that was when I started like liking cooking. And I don't know that I've ever told this story, what I'm about to say, but I guess I, I realized I enjoyed cooking. And so like I'd always like learned to cook at home a little bit, and my mom cooked meals every night and still hasn't figured out how to use salt, but but I learned, I would cook when I was younger. But in college, I was always cooking fish stew and just doing different things and cooking for everybody. I love communal things. But it was funny. So I told you 2013 was when we went to that event when I said something to Samuel. But Christmas of 2012, Samuel and his wife gave me a cookbook. It was oh my Lord, it's right here in front of me. It's why am I drawing a blank right now?
Bobby Flay? I don't know what's good.
No, it's Kevin Gillespie.
Okay, Kevin Gillespie. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they gave me this cookbook, and I remember opening it up, and I was like, "Oh, cool cookbook." And Sarah said to me, she said, "I thought you really liked this. I know how much you love cooking." And that honestly, no shit, that was like the clicking moment for me. And I was like, wait a minute, I do like this. Like I do enjoy cooking. It was just like one of those things like I did, but I hadn't even paid attention to it of
That's
how
so interesting.
I love like serving people and doing things. And that's when it clicked for me, like, hey, you do like cooking. And so that was really when I
Huh.
started, like, I remember that he had a bacon jam recipe in there, and I made bacon jam and started putting it on stuff and started like exploring more and started cooking at home more, cooking barbecue and those kind of things. And so that's, between that, so that was, December. Now you jump forward to February or March of 2013 when I did that event. My mind was really working right then
Mhm.
around food and what I enjoyed and trying to figure out and trying to do something I enjoyed because I knew I did not enjoy what I was doing in the construction world.
And once you get immersed in that world, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And then you start to realize too, because that's why a lot of people, I've mentioned this probably 100 times on the show, is people think that I just eat, I'm ravenous about meat and barbecue. And I love that, but I also love the people because you start to get like-minded, creative people.
Yeah, and it's one thing to like the food, but I was slightly blinded and mistaken in part of what I was attracted to, right? So I go to this event with Samuel, and you know, we're drinking some bourbons and some beers around a pig cooker. Everybody's just having a good time, and everybody's so nice and appreciative of what you're doing. And I'm starting to like think, okay, well, and then I go to another event, and we're just having a good time, and you're getting attention. And so I see these people, these chefs and pitmasters, if you will, that are getting all this attention.
Mhm.
I'm like, dang, I want to be like them. So there's a piece of me that doesn't truly realize what the restaurant business is all about. And all, so while I'm saying, hey, sign me up, I want to be a part of this, I'm not giving credit to a
Yeah.
number of years that earned all these people the ability to do it this way and to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Because
really got kicked in the teeth when it came to running a real restaurant. Because Skylight Inn, when I was there, dude, we only had, I think it was like 6, 7 of us total employees, open from Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. I never had to make a schedule. I would order food, but how big is a food truck order when you got 3 menu items, 4 menu items? It was just, yeah, I'd worked in a restaurant for a long time. Yeah, I knew Skylight Inn. Hell, Skylight didn't even have a cash register. They only took cash. So I just carried a tackle box full of cash to the side room when I would close counted it up, write it on the tab, and like, that was a deal. So,
Oh, that's hilarious.
then when we get ready to open up this restaurant, it was man, it was painful.
And what was that
Um,
like? What was the planning of it? And did you guys build that? I forget. You did build that from the ground up. Was that?
yeah, the Winterville restaurant was a new construction build.
And how did you choose that location? Was that just happenstance, or was there like, did you want to have it close but not too close? Or
Yeah, so I was not in every decision making process
okay.
in that phase of things. I would hear about it, we would talk about it, but that area of our town was not yet really developed, but everything was moving that way. So we were able to have that parcel of land's 1.3 acres. So we were able to have land to build and do what we needed to do with smokehouse and all those kinds of things.
What was the reception once you guys did open? Was it pretty big, or was it slow?
Oh yeah.
Slow.
No, it
Okay.
was really big. Like we were crushed. Line lined up. In Eastern North Carolina, people don't line up for food like they do in other parts of the country for barbecue. Like if you're waiting in line in Eastern North Carolina for barbecue, you've got a line of potentially pissed off people.
Yeah, I know.
Because barbecue's not celebrated like that. I mean, it's slowly getting that way now, but it's just a means to an end for a hungry belly. Like it's just a food that we
Yeah.
have. So people aren't lining up around Eastern North Carolina waiting for the doors to open. So when they were lined up outside of our doors, out the door, there's a lot of pressure to get people through the line and to get things figured out. But all that comes with like a dance because I can have five cashiers, but the kitchen can only make food so fast. And so,
Mhm.
what not all people realize with restaurants too is like we're pacing ourselves. There's times where, if the dining room's, almost full, even though we've got two cash registers, we're only going to use one because what are you going to do when we take your order? Where are you
Mhm.
going to go? So there's
Yeah.
certain pieces that we have to do that people may think we're being neglecting something, but it's actually part of their strategy.
It's a dance. It's like
Yeah.
when I talked to when Aaron Franklin did his tour, he said that the cutter can slow things up, talk to people more if they realize that there's not enough seating, or
Yep.
speed things up if there's open seats. And it's something that you don't think about, but it actually exists within a restaurant.
Yeah.
But were you anxious, or did you think this was, this is
I was
gonna?
anxious, but I was also too ignorant to know any better of what we were completely getting ourselves into, and what was about to go down, and what it was going to look like from a piece. The first startup of that restaurant, I think it was like 90 days I worked straight, and we're talking 18, 20-hour days. And that
Whoa.
sounds like crazy. Like, I don't know how the hell I did it. I really don't. And I've told other people this if they've gotten in the restaurant business, it's like when you start, like it's going to be so much work. And all you're going to be thinking about is like, when does this stop? And you're going to be thinking about all the things you're missing or all the things you'd rather be doing. And then it slowly transitions into it's just like this is your life and this is your lifestyle. And so all those habits that you had leading up to D-Day, slowly go away. Like if it was simple as watching football every Thursday night, all those things just go away. And then slowly everybody around you accepts the fact that, you're just really busy at the restaurant. And then depending on what that looks like, it slowly starts coming back. It took me, because our business evolved and then we had COVID and then we opened up a second restaurant. Um, I'm we've 9 years was, like I said yesterday, I would say honestly 7.5 years it took me through our journey to kind of get some decent quality of life back. Um,
And you're starting to get it right, because like I can see it from
oh
afar.
yeah, dude, things are good now, but that's because we've got full management staff, and the biggest thing is we have people that have been with us for a while.
Mhm.
The biggest part of the first step is not having to be in the restaurant every waking hour. But then once you get somebody in there, you can't go over every possible scenario. So now you're on call at all
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
you know, and that makes for a really long day when if somebody's in your restaurant at 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. But then it's just you start chipping away at it. You get one person that can help you and take some of those calls. But now you're their call, and thankfully we've got
Yeah.
our at the Raleigh store, we've had two managers there since before we opened. At the Greenville store, we've got managers from, I think the shortest tenured one's 6.5 or 7 years, and the longest one is like 8.5 years.
That's
So
ideal.
yeah, it's super great. It's scary. We all started when we were young, and we've all had developed families, and you always wonder when somebody's going to say, hey, it's time to move on. Nonetheless, somebody moving on today will be very painful still. Um, but what you do have that you don't have in the early days is even in like hourly employees that know their role. In the beginning, just nobody knows what to do. Hell, we didn't know what to do. That
Well,
was the
yeah,
hardest.
you're figuring things out
Yeah.
and how to manage what you're doing, and and you also too, you can't figure out, like, it takes you almost a year to figure out, like, seasonally too, what's going on, pars and
Mhm.
whys and stuff. What I know, I don't want to talk like all the nits, like all the little bits about cooking whole hog, but you had told a story about how you were cooking whole hog at Skylight, and then how you cook it differently at Sam Jones. Can you explain that? Like, 'cause you said you were using uh like cardboard or something. Oh no, you were using potato sacks or something, or some kind of.
Oh, you're talking about a story of past when you've heard me talk about.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, you were telling me,
Yeah.
but
So,
it's in the tour, but I want you to,
yeah,
for
yeah.
people.
So the Jones family are tight as hell. And so they were not going to be wasting money on a bunch of random stuff. And they very much believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is working. And we had this. So back in the day, which I think Skylight still gets their cornmeal in 25-pound bags. So you'd have these 25-pound cornmeal bags. And after we would cut them up and dump the cornmeal, we would save all these bags, and they would just go into like a pile outside in the smokehouse. And so then when it was time to go get a piece of meat off the pits, we weren't getting like those nice black like gloves that everybody uses. We were just going to get cornmeal bags, and we just stick our arms in the cornmeal bags and then use those to to lift the pig up. And if you were lucky, you didn't get a bunch of grease on them, you could reuse those cornmeal bags, or if not, you got other ones, and they were good fire starters also. But yeah, we would just use
That's so
your
funny.
cornmeal bags to also flip the pigs. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely still burn yourself, but quite honestly, man, that cardboard, that because those bags weren't, they were almost like a two-ply bag
True.
of cardboard, or not cardboard, but of like
Yeah.
paper. So they worked well for no
It's
more
just
than what.
funny. It just sounded so interesting when
Yeah,
you told it.
I'm not saying it's not hot either, but you got to think too, when a pig's on a pit and you got the skin, like right when you get done crisping the skin, like yeah, that skin's got some pretty high surface temperature. But the skin's also like it is insulates you from that hot meat that is holding the hot temp. So
Okay, that
it's
makes sense.
really
Yeah.
not that bad. What's bad is when you go to lift it up and some grease spills down your arm or a piece of meat falls on it or something like that. But no, it wasn't. It's not that bad.
Go ahead.
We didn't even use food gloves back then, and so we
Yeah, of
would bring
course.
a quarter of meat in, you wash your hands, and then you just grab the damn ham and throw it up there and start. And I laugh now because yes, it is convenient to wear cotton gloves underneath your latex gloves, but I always kind of like giving like you softy. Like we used to just grab it and roll with it. And if
Yeah.
it was too damn hot, you just would kind of have to hold and you use a knife to scrape it off or anything if it wasn't tender enough to fall off. But yeah, we didn't use gloves at all for anything.
Well, no, when I back in the day, it's for a different story. And for I worked at a barbecue place in Texas, and we would take the briskets off with our bare hands, and we cut bare hands. We wouldn't ever
Yeah.
use gloves. And I think, yeah, that was just, it became a thing, and it made sense that after a while for people to start using, food safe
And
gloves.
all that wasn't, it's just we were just doing what they'd always done. I mean,
Yeah,
eventually the department kind of put a stop to that,
yeah,
but it wasn't us trying to be. I mean, we would wash our hands and we
yeah.
had
Of course.
Clorox and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, and you guys made, as you mentioned, the thing you guys designed with BQ, those the pits, the cookers. You had specific ones, and then you kind of altered them. But then also too, what's funny, because people that might not have seen the tour, you guys designed the rally place differently with this is it the smoke box or the smoke chamber or whatever the.
So to kind of back up and piece together some history too on
Yeah.
all that. So Samuel was invited to go cook at that SFA dinner at the Charleston Food and Wine Festival in 2000. I cannot remember if it was 2010 or 11, but now, Skylight only had masonry pits built, like stationary masonry pits. And so they're asking Samuel to go, cook away from home. And so that's when Samuel got the first BQ grill built.
Oh,
Uh, Now, BQ was already building these grills, and Samuel and Uncle Jeff, who is Samuel's dad's business partner in Skylight Inn. So Samuel's dad and Uncle Jeff's dad were brothers. They opened Skylight Inn together. Uh, and so Jeff and Samuel kind of drew out this grill on paper. It was built and made into our mobile rig that we still use today. So that kind of became the Sam Jones model or whatever that you see a lot of people using. It was just kind of a modified version of what they were kind of doing, and it's kind of evolved over the years. So when we opened up the Winterville store, the building the brick pits thing was not going to be an option. The health department wanted movable, cleanable, smooth surface, all these standards. And from a building code perspective, we, technically needed to have hoods, ventilation hoods in there. Um, Building smokehouses in different municipalities becomes challenging because it's unknown to everybody. And nobody wants to put their signature on it saying they'll go with it. So everybody's deflecting to somebody or deferring to somebody else. And oftentimes may pick a path that may be overkill just to protect themselves,
yeah.
inherently just to protect the public or the person or whatever going on. What we were able to do at the Winterville store, so in the building code for a hood, in paraphrasing it, is like mechanical ventilation, non-combustible, fire suppression, and maybe like easily cleanable or something like that. But there was a handful of components. It was like, type one hood or approved alternative. And these different components was what made it acceptable. So what we were able to do was build a masonry and steel smokehouse with a completely steel roof. We put mechanical ventilation in the eaves. We sprinkled the building, and due to the nature of the metal and those things, it was cleanable. And so we were able to get by with that at the Winterville store when we did construction. So we had smokehouse, as I just described, the BQ grills within that. And to try to be efficient, we put the chimney right in the dead center of the smokehouse, four grills on each side. And the thought was, we're shoveling from the middle. This is easy, whatever. We opened up November 10th. By December, we had ordered a J&R smoke. What's it called? It's not the Little Red Smokehouse. It's like the 250 version, non-rotisserie. So we had ordered that to help with capacity because what we were struggling with was we were so busy and we had pigs on the grill, but by the time it got to be 2 p.m. and we needed to put pigs on for the next day, we still had pigs on the grill and we were having to use grills to cook ribs and chicken and that kind of stuff. So kind of in the same
That makes
timing,
sense.
we ordered that J&R specifically because, everything they make is wood fired and we could never kind of be identified as possibly cooking with
Yeah.
gas or anything like that. And for the right situation, that's cool. For us, it was very important to honor that family tradition of cooking with wood, making sure that we weren't getting away from that. When we were designing the grills from BQ for the restaurant, they all have a pretty shallow lid on them. Well, I requested that we get two grills made with a deeper lid on them that we could then add like a riser inside to have some shells for cooking ribs and chicken. So we had two grills designed that way, six grills, standard normal lid. Well, I was doing like I would work the whole day of the rest, like the whole day, from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. But Samuel was coming because we didn't have any room. We weren't able to put pigs on until sometimes 9, 10 p.m. So Samuel was pulling kind of the night shift to kind of overlap it so I didn't have to stay there the whole time. And finally, one night, he came up with this idea to double stack the pigs in those BQ grills. So basically, what we would do, because we had these turning, the turning mechanism in
Yeah,
the
you
grill. So it's basically two cooking grates that you sandwich the animal together. There's some pins that, when you put the grate on there, you put a cotter pin and it holds it. So he lowered the bottom grate to its lowest pin setting, And then we would just
Huh.
put the cotter pin in the top and sit the other grate on top. So we had about 10, 11 inches between cooking surfaces. And we still use that today. So it was, at the time, it was a means to an end, but what it really created was some efficiencies too. So instead of having coals going in two grills, now we've got coals going in one grill.
Hmm.
So that was kind of that evolution of the BQ grill and the deep lids and why that all kind of came about. I think if you get any of the BQ grills now, they all come with a deep lid on them,
Oh,
like
really?
standard. Yeah.
I'll have
On
to take a look. There's one, I think, in here in Los Angeles. I'll take a look.
when we were just down in Charleston this weekend cooking, all the BQ rigs that were there all had deep lids on them.
That's fun.
Look back in the day, all of them were short.
And but
Um,
also too, doesn't it get insanely hot because you put that chimney in the center of the?
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous, like 130 degrees. So I went back finally and got a fabricator locally to build like this contraption that allowed us to have doors on it
Oh,
that were not mounted to the masonry, so they could have some play. But you're able to see my fine engineering if you ever visit. But the doors ended up
I would.
helping keep some of that radiant heat
Yeah,
within. Very hot. It's a lot better than it
yeah.
was.
But it also too, when you designed the Raleigh store, you made sure that to have that
Yeah.
off to the side.
So stepping over into the Raleigh thing, we realized, well, so the whole hood thing we talked about that we were able to do in Winterville, we were not able to achieve in Raleigh. Now, from the traditional smokehouse aesthetics, it is not ideal, right? To have the hood system over all these cookers. Personally, for having to manage and lead people who work out there every day, I love it. I think it's very welcomed. It's a better quality of life out there. It's just better. Um, so we had to do those, and we put the chimney on one end of the building this time, with only the bottom portion open to the interior of the smokehouse to where you're actually going to shovel coals. There's a small door with about a 12-inch gap that you can poke the wood or do anything you need to, but the loading point for any wood going in the chimney is exterior. Saves some steps, but also saves have extra radiant heat coming in the smokehouse.
How did you guys choose Raleigh? Does that make what made sense about that for you guys?
Samuel had some peers in the restaurant business that he had gotten to know, and it was just, I think, along a number of years of people saying, "Oh, we don't have this kind of barbecue in Raleigh, or we need some barbecue in Raleigh, and y'all should come there." And so I don't know if it was all that, but it just seemed like the natural progression of where we needed to go next. It was far enough away to you got to establish to a whole new clientele of people. And see, we started looking in Raleigh in 2000. I guess we started kind of preparing, getting our ducks in a row in 2017-ish. We signed a lease on the place we're at right now in 2018, into 2018. It took all of 2019 to get permitting. And then construction started in 2020. And
Wonderful.
obviously the pandemic and all those things. But, another blessing in disguise, because if that restaurant had quick permitting, we would have had a brand new restaurant as soon as the pandemic hit.
True.
And what the restaurant in Raleigh doesn't have that the Winterville restaurant has, the Winterville has a drive-through. Winterville has, a big parking lot, and we have plenty of spots that we quickly converted to curbside. And so we were able to thrive during the pandemic because we were set up for success in all the ways that business was allowed. And then we opened up in February of 2021 in Raleigh. And where that was, and as far as North Carolina's regulations went, we had just gotten back open to 50% capacity interior. So what that did for us was kind of throttle how we opened. So
Mhm.
we did Tuesday through Saturday to go only for 2 weeks. Then we
Oh,
did Tuesday through Saturday at the 50%, and then finally after a month, we opened 7 days a week. But it was still at 50% capacity in the dining room.
I wonder how, like, I forget how that, because you kind of, it washes away those memories. Did people have to police the 50% thing? Were you kind of, was it, or were people just kind of eyeing it, I guess, because like they
Yeah,
could be one human up.
everything at that time as a business, you wanted to survive,
Exactly.
but morally, as a person, you wanted to do what was right. But then on top of that, if you weren't doing what was right, there was this such a risk of somebody just blasting you, and
Sure.
everybody was scared. Nobody knew what to do. So for us, what we did to limit that and ourselves and try to put our best foot forward, we just removed tables. So we didn't. We had it set up to
That
where
makes
you could
sense. Okay.
have the 50% capacity, and all that 6 foot stuff. We were trying to keep tables separated and that.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that even though Greenville or Winterville and Raleigh are only an hour and a half away, people in Raleigh approached COVID very differently than people in Winterville did. And we still there's a version of that, not just with COVID, that each store, I mean, different communities trend different ways with different things.
That's interesting. Now, was there a backlash? I think, I don't know if Sam told me or somebody told me, would- having beer and wine at the Winterville location, was that at first that people were upset about that, or certain people were? Or,
Yeah. So the beer thing, so when we opened Sam Jones has a counter, a bar, if you will, but that was never intended to be a bar that served alcohol. Alcohol and the decision to sell alcohol didn't come till during the physical construction. What that was a lunch counter. And at Skylight Inn, early opening days, there was a 7 seat lunch counter there. So
oh,
that lunch counter with the 7 seats was a tribute to Skylight Inn. It was never meant to be
oh,
a bar. But we did decide to sell alcohol, and that was a decision that Samuel had to make. And, it was Samuel's dad, who's a preacher, who did not approve of it. And so that was something Samuel had to deal with from his own, family and his own reputation and things in our town. And so dad wasn't a fan of it. Yeah, there was people that would tell him that, they were disappointed in him for selling those, to doing that. And, you know, right now and historically, that store in 9 years has never done more than 1% of sales in alcohol. Uh, it just doesn't garner. So you're kind of like, well, do we even have to sell it? But the reason why we sell beer is the same reason why we got a salad on the menu. It's that veto vote again. That
yeah.
person that wants to enjoy a beer. And just in the nature of the way that restaurant works, people don't come in there and sit at the bar and drink 3 and 4 beers and watch the game. It's kind of turn and burn fast casual. Now in Raleigh, that store, it does much more alcohol. There's people in there drinking a craft beer at lunchtime on Mondays. You don't see that in Greenville.
It's a little more metropolitan, and it's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So
interesting.
the so the Raleigh store does, it has the beer and it has full liquor and wine. Winterville up until last September just sells beer. We tried wine early on, it didn't work, but we just sold beer mainly. But we do have like some frozen liquor cocktails, and we have a batched old fashioned at the Winterville store. But you're not going to go in there and get a pour of anything.
Yeah. No, it was curious, and because I think it was when I went to North Carolina, it was the first time I realized that like certain stores would sell hard alcohol. Like there was like a state liquor store or something. Is that?
Yeah, so it's governed by the state. So
Yeah,
we have ABC stores.
ABC. That's what it was. Yeah, it was just something, and I know that I think Texas had it's what it's called, blue laws or something, or some kind of, I forget what it's called. There's some kind of term for that. I'm
Well,
not sure.
so like in North Carolina, you can only buy your alcohol or like, I'm sorry, you can only buy liquor from the ABC store. So you're not going to go pick this up at like any, store like you can outside other states. And restaurants, have to buy there from those same stores too. So the cool thing about it is that, you know, the pricing's controlled. So you go to a store in a different state and maybe you buy Blanton's for, I don't know, 135 bucks or whatever they want to sell it for. You're going to get Blanton's for 59.99 or whatever it sells for. Whatever that retail price is set by the company is what you're going to pay for it in North
Oh,
Carolina.
yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about that. But now, is there anything about, because the tours are pretty detailed? Is there anything about the tour, I mean, the restaurants, that you would want people to know? And are you thinking of a third location? Is that something that, or is Tar two, that's a good enough beast for you?
Yeah, I think right now we're just sticking at the two and trying to maximize some other opportunities. Um, right now, a big project for me is getting us going on Gold Belly and pursuing that, other kind of mail order type stuff. Doing what we do the way we do it's just not easy to replicate. It's
Yeah.
not easy to put out there, and it's when I say it's not easy to do, there's a lot of easier ways to do what we do. And I'm not saying it can't be managed, but there's a lot of areas you turn your back if somebody's cutting a corner or taking
Mhm.
something away. Hell, like I'm the world's worst. I love trying to create efficiencies. And if it wasn't for like my moral compass towards, the Jones family and knowing what matters to them, I mean, there's a handful of things that can make my life easier and the people in our company's life easier every day, but I can't change those things because it's part of what we do. Like chip away a little bit here, a little bit there, and before long you turn around, you're not even close to what you used to be.
No, definitely. And that people are coming for that consistency that they're expecting. Like people that visited 3 years ago expect it to be the same as when they come now.
Right.
But also too, you guys have brisket on the menu.
We do. We have brisket at both stores, and that was completely in effort to, well, number one, the benefit of it was to provide a brisket that was cooked in a good quality way. Texas barbecue is my favorite, and there's nowhere to get really good brisket around here. Um, Traditionally, now there's a couple of places that are doing a really great job, but you know, 4 years ago, it didn't
Mm.
exist. Now there's Lawrence Barbecue and John G's and Damp and Prime. These guys are killing it. But there was nobody that was like an established barbecue place that had been around for a while that did any brisket. So there was a time frame of saying, "Nah, it's not who we are. We're not going to do that." But to your point of, traditional stuff and consistency and stuff, that also lends to when you're in the walls of that restaurant, it's very boring, right? You're doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. And so the people that come to work for us in the kitchen don't have any creative freedoms, and they're not getting to establish themselves or anything that their creativity. So I had guys at both stores that always asked about it and wanted to do it. And it was just a way to let them be a part of doing
Oh,
something in the store. And we serve it a couple of days a week, just Mondays and Tuesdays. And the hope was that it would drive people to, come eat on some of our slower days. And so Raleigh does a couple of other features here and there, some pork belly burn ins, but each one of those things is just to give the people that work there a kind of a place to express their passion and do something outside the norm.
yeah. Well, that's nice. I didn't. And then, how did your relationship with Matt at Meat Church? How did that whole thing come about?
Yeah, so Samuel was an ambassador for Yeti Coolers. And in 2017, they did an ambassador summit in Austin. And they and Samuel were always nice enough to kind of include me because of when we were coming to cook or do things, it's kind of a two-man job. It's kind of hard to do all that alone. And so I got the benefit of being the plus one. And at that time, we went to a dinner. It was like kind of a welcome dinner, and Meat Church was, popular, but Meat Church wasn't anything like it is now. I mean, Matt has just done an incredible job with that brand.
Yes.
But at that time, he did have an online presence, and as I told you, I had been, now at this point for 4 years or so, like cooking a lot of barbecue on my own and doing things. And so I was aware of Meat Church and a fan of that brand. Um, and so at that dinner, there was like bull riders and mountain climbers and all these kinds of stuff. So Matt was the thing that I had the most in common with. And so we struck it up with Matt. Actually, I think it was, I found out he had a cooler. And back then, um, I think well, yeah, he had a cooler. It was a different beer at that time. But we were kept going to his truck and getting beers. And so that kind of started our friendship. And we stayed in touch. That was September 2017. And I knew he was doing those classes in his backyard at the time. And I asked him if he would, if I could come check it out and hang out and shadow. And he invited me, went and hung out. And that class I went to, Miguel Vidal at Valentina's was doing it then. Um, And really, I guess that trip probably kind of kicked it off for our friendship from there. And we've just always stayed in touch. My wife and I, and at times my son, um, go to his lake house every Memorial Day, and we cook a pig and just hang out. And we stay in touch. And he's invited me to go do a couple of different little competition things. But it's just a genuine friendship. He's a genuine dude. And one
Yeah.
thing I respect about Matt is that um, you hear him say it all the time when he's saying, I don't care what you cook on, just cook. I'm not here to tell you got to cook on this or how to do it. But he is just such a great resource. He's a good person. He is truly talented. He's not just a figurehead of anything. He can back up everything he's doing. But for me, people are like, hey man, how should I cook a brisket or how should I cook this? I'm like, dude, just Google meat church, man. There's plenty of options. There ain't nobody producing it any better.
Yeah. No, I agree. And he's such a great guy, and he's always been really kind to me too. And like I'm part of this world, but in a
He
different
said the same
way.
about you. He said you're really sweet guys with his words
Oh,
about you.
well, the same back at him. He's such a great guy, and it's also because of him I've connected with other people, and he's great at kind of forming relationships with other people, like producing friendships. And he's also cares about local, and he's helped a lot of local guys succeed in a way that they might not have otherwise. So it's
Well, I see that often too. His brand power can he's able to charge a lot if he wanted to. And there's certain times he comes across people that he just believes in. And I mean, he's not getting anything out of the promotion of their
yeah.
products. I mean, but he has the power to change things. I mean, so we were down at his lake house a couple years ago. I said, well, hell, let me just cook the beans that we cook. They're really great. They're easy to do. And he was talking about possibly need some recipes to put online at that time. And I was like, dude, you should do these beans that I'm going to do. They're super easy. People love them. Like they're a fan favorite. And so he said, hey, yeah, I'm going to do those beans. And I said, well, if you're going to do the beans, will you at least use our barbecue sauce on it to throw us a bone on kind of promoting them a little bit? And he was like, yeah, no brainer. So sent him some barbecue sauce. He did it. The video released on a Wednesday at like 9 a.m. That was our biggest online sales week we've ever had. You know what I'm saying? Like barbecue sauce flying off the shelf. I mean, the meat church effect is real.
Yeah. No, I know it is, and I've talked to like Wes Wicker from Big Wicks, like his thought. Like there's been times where things like whenever so he's done a YouTube video with somebody, their restaurant or their barbecue sauces blows up. I was the one thing I wanted to mention because I wanted to segue into fishing because I know fishing is a big deal with you. Is you guys did some kind of event? I think it was the time that you had talked to maybe Matt about me on the way back. I think it was before our tours or right when we were doing our tours was it was but you guys were like cooking like with the water was coming. It was just such a surreal thing.
Yeah, so he had we so that same trip that we met at in 2017 with Yeti, there's a fishing guy from down in Florida Keys named Bear Holman. And there's a handful of us that hit it off on that trip, and we're still like buddies and
Oh,
communicating to this day. So Matt and Christian had gone down to just fish and hang out with Bear. And so Bear also is one of the founders of W Sauce,
oh,
the Bear and Burton's W Sauce that's kind of popular in the barbecue world. Um, and they had kind of kicked around this idea of trying to create some kind of event or charity and thing. And that was what was initially called the Rub and Tug Invitational. And that started in 2023. So I had just, we just was coming off of, seeing Matt and, I guess I was fresh in his mind and he knew that I enjoyed fishing. He's like, hey, I want you to come do this cooking and thing. It's just going to be chill for a good cause. So we did the Rub and Tug Invitational, and then some more corporate brands got involved in a good way. And the name had to evolve to the Key West Invitational.
I can see
Uh,
that.
yeah. So the Key West Invitational, so they had that, and it's the first day is fishing, and there's a point system allocated for the number of fish and the species of fish you catch. The second day is lobster diving, and there's points for undersized and keeper lobsters. And then you all go to a sandbar. And this year there was like a side kind of burger competition. And then the third day, that's a barbecue competition. And We cooked like this year it was turkey, tri-tip, ribs. Shoot, there was another piece of beef I don't even remember. Um, but this year it was me, Matt, Tuffy Stone, and Christian, Matt's son. And it's just a good time, man. It's
Yeah.
very informal and it's for good cause, but it's fun.
You guys were on, so that's you were on a sandbar. That's what you guys were cooking with, like,
Yeah,
because you had those pop up like little tent things, but I could see the water running underneath your guys'
that
feet,
you
and I'm like,
know,
this is like, where is this, like a tropical island? It just looked beautiful.
you know how they say like social media isn't real life? That is a damn good example of that right there. That sandbar, it looks great. Content of it looks great. But mind you, this sandbar is 9 miles from like the mainland. And it was all that stuff's brought out there on pontoon boats.
Oh,
And these
hilarious.
pontoon boats are underpowered to carry out. It was taking 3 hour transit to get the pontoon boat out there. And you got to do it at perfect tide timing, right? So then you're able to unload everything
Oh,
and then you get the grills out. Then you got to get everything lit. And then, so kudos to all the hardworking volunteers of that event. I don't know that we'll be doing much cooking on the sandbars in the future because it is just insanely labor intensive to pull
okay.
that off.
Well, it looked good for social media. It looked good. It was just something I had never seen. It almost seemed like something you would see on like a contest show, like
Hmm.
like one of those island shows, like
Yeah,
Survivor or something like that.
for
Yeah.
sure. So we got to find a closer sandbar for
Yeah,
future.
that would make sense. So now fishing, what is has fishing been in your blood? So you because you talked about mud and doing stuff, like were you fishing from a young age? Is that something you've always been doing, or?
No, I mean, growing up in like Eastern North Carolina, the the hobby type things to do, is kind of hunting and fishing and can be those things. I didn't grow up in an outdoor family. I had friends who did it, so that was my access if I ever did those things. But in growing up, I never spent much time at all doing those things. As we started traveling and doing some barbecue stuff, I got to be buddies with some guys in the Charleston area. So every time we would go to Charleston to do an event, I would slip out and go red fishing and do that 3 or 4 times a year. Um, and fishing kind of became a thing that I started doing when I would go to different towns instead of like sitting at the hotel or just doing the different events. Like I've gone fly fishing in like the concrete bayous in Houston, Texas, just
Uh,
trying to hire out and just do different stuff. But it still wasn't like I wasn't eating up with it. I just enjoyed doing it. My son turned 7 on Friday, and when he was about 4, he just was watching YouTube videos of hunting and fishing, and I have no clue why, no clue how, but he kind of got into it. And so I started showing interest in it and trying to facilitate that for him. Um, and then I quit drinking about 2 years ago. And I've all of a sudden like had all this, we had just started hunting right before I quit drinking. And it was coming into the summertime, and I was like, damn, like we were like deer hunting or raccoon hunting or turkey hunting. What the hell are we gonna do all summer? Like I want to stay outdoors, like I want to stay active. And I was like, well, dang, I've never really had a boat because I didn't want to be the guy drinking and driving the boat. Somebody had to pull the damn thing, and I wanted to be the guy having fun, not the guy having responsibility. Um, and it's kind of clicked to me like, dang, I should get a boat. And so that's what I did. And him and he was really into bass fishing. And I hired a guide to take us bass fishing. The guy called me the day before. He's like, look, the bass um, aren't really biting that good. Would you be open to going trout fishing instead? And with your son, we can, it'll be a little bit more active. And I was like, let's try it. So we went, and I just really, really enjoyed that experience with Larkin. And that was when it hooked me. And all of the outdoor stuff and the fishing stuff initially started for me was a way to spend time with Larkin. The look on his face and like the experience when he caught like that big fish or he shot that animal or did that, it was just this pride. And I was like he was proud of himself. I was proud of him. And I started chasing that feeling, but then I got addicted to it because I'd never done these things on my own. I didn't have the skill set to do it. So that became my new drive. That was my new, instead of watching how to cook ribs and brisket on YouTube, I'm looking how to catch speckled trout and, what makes this area good and that good. And so for me, it's an unattainable goal that I'm really bad about doing something when I can check the box, I'm done with it and I drop it. But fishing and outdoors is just ever changing. There's always something bigger. There's once you catch it one way, you can go about it a different way. Like it's just
That's
limitless.
great.
But all that, he still loves it. We were just fishing yesterday morning in Charleston, um, and he enjoys doing it. We're going bear hunting on Wednesday. It's just what
Ah,
we do. It's our thing now. As you can see, I mean that's I can't
yeah,
really do.
yeah.
That's his first raccoon. On the other walls, there's squirrels and stuff, and so
Okay, I
it's
can see.
just cool memories.
No, that's so great, and it's inspiring to me. I don't have children, but it's something that it's always been something in the back of my mind I've wanted to get into. So
Well,
it's really great.
I'm a very I can't relax. I can't sit still. I've always
Same.
got to be doing something. Um, and so like at the restaurant, if I could pick any position or I could do anything, I would always try to get into the dish pit. And I just love that mindless activity of just like accomplishing something the whole time,
Oh
but
yeah,
I could also kind of think because it wasn't causing me to critically think. I was able to be working through some issues and thinking through things. And for me, I think fishing is the same way. I definitely don't, it's not a relaxing thing for me. Every damn day I go, I've got expectations. It's much like golf, you're like, some days you're like, I'm gonna sell everything. I don't even know why I do. And then you make that birdie on number 18 or you catch that one fish and you're like, I need to go buy new rods, new plugs. But being out there, it allows me, I'm always casting, I'm always doing something. I don't do a lot of like a ton of live bait or just like letting stuff soak and wait. I'm active. Um,
that's
so
cool.
it's good for me, man. I solve a lot of problems out there.
No, it's important. I love coming up with ideas when I'm doing some mindless task. Like even if it's just yard work, it's just definitely something that there's something about it. But now, and also too, I think you had posted something. It was your son reading something about you, and it was the most heartfelt thing I've ever seen online. That must have
Yeah,
filled your heart with.
it was, man. So he's a really good kid. And I'm not just saying that because he's mine. He is he's the only thing in my life I've ever truly unconditionally loved, and I truly cannot be more proud of him. And he just does things here and there. But my wife, my birthday was October 23rd, and she had my family and my mentor come into town to share a meal. She got one of our local chef here in town to come and do a private dinner,
Oh,
and um, Larkin, I don't know where that came from. He came to the head of the table and he wanted to give a speech, and he was kind of tearing up when he was doing it. I was like, "Holy crap, where did that come from?" But um, little man's my best friend. He's just
yeah.
we've got a good little relationship, and I don't try. I don't put effort in spending time with him. He's just who I want to spend my time with.
That's so nice. Do you think is he doing stuff in the barbecue joints? Is he going to, or is that not his
So
interest?
he um he he doesn't he likes going and helping. He wasn't much help at all this weekend. He did come out there and but the ribs were too hot for him to handle. But what he loves to do is he helps me with the packing of the food, like backpacking and that kind
Uh,
of stuff. I had him a couple of weeks ago. He spent 6.5 hours running the vacuum machine. So he enjoys doing certain things, but he hadn't gotten the cooking bug yet.
oh, that's cool. Well, is there anything about, because we talked for about like an hour and 20 minutes or so within this interview itself, is there anything about the restaurants you want people to know about you guys or about Sam that maybe people don't know about? And Samuel, is that something that people call him that have been friends with him for a long time? Is that because most people call
Yeah,
him Sam
so
Jones?
like the media kind of started this whole Sam thing. He's always was Samuel to us.
Okay.
Old people around town call him Sammy. So
Do they really?
yeah, and so we would just like write like send in mail and it'd be like Sam, Sammy, Samuel Jones because like he had these three different names he would go by. I guess the one thing that from the restaurant perspective is, you know, if you want an ability to kind of to experience kind of a hybrid of real core traditional Eastern North Carolina barbecue, and but you still enjoy, the ribs and the chicken and that kind of stuff. I think we're a great option, and I think when you are coming to visit us, you are getting a piece of history. And I've never been the one to try to say we are the best and we're the only way and all that kind of stuff. But if you like barbecue and you're interested in barbecue history, it's a necessary piece to experience. Samuel's family's been doing barbecue since the 1800s. That specific date is kind of a moving target, but we know that that's the case. I was just in Portugal and I was taking a tour of this palace, and they were like, this palace began construction in 1890 and it was built until this time. And it was like all this stuff that seems really like romantic and historical and cool. And I looked at my wife and I was like, damn, Samuel's family's been was cooking whole hogs and selling that shit for some money back when these people were building this palace.
It's
It's
wild.
it is wild to think about that far. And so I have a kind of a revived pride in what we do, because it is very hard to get. I mean, very easy to get watered down when you're doing it day to day in the restaurant world. But we are a traditional barbecue place that still cooks the whole pig, and we use wood coals to do it. We're 25 minutes from the airport in Raleigh, so if for some reason you got a long layover or you're flying in
Yeah.
for work, it's a great option.
And Raleigh's a growing city. People should visit it anyways. That would be
Yeah.
something. And then how far away then is Winterville? Because you mentioned it, Winterville and
So
Greenville. Are
yeah,
they on the are they on just so people can understand? I've
yeah. So I'm
Googled it.
terrible about that. I'm really terrible about interchanging that name. So Winterville and Greenwood is the same restaurant. That's an hour and a half away from Raleigh,
Okay.
um, and it's about 7 or 10 miles away from Skylight Inn.
Okay.
So literally, the side of the road the restaurant's on is Winterville. Across the street is Greenville. And it kind of becomes one of those things where when you're more people have probably heard of Greenville than they have Winterville. And so I interchange the names all the time.
Does Winterville have a like a festival or parade or anything for
Yeah.
wintertime?
They've got the no, they got the Watermelon Festival in August.
'Cause that sounds like Winterville would have,
Yeah.
but they don't have anything specific for winter. It seems like it would be
Oh
appropriate.
no, 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 no. I see where you're going with that. No,
No.
no.
Okay. Well, no, there's towns. I think I
Yeah,
just saw
you're
something
right.
that passed through my feed of something that was like a town in, I think it's called Leavenworth in Washington. And it's like an old Amish, not Amish, like a Danish, it looks like whatever the architecture is, it's like a Christmas town all year round. They designed
Yeah.
it that way. Just the settler. What's the trophy, the award on the right below the raccoon? Is that a
Big. Um, that is from our first annual Kings of Q. So Aiden, always being known for barbecue, the annual festival is actually the Collard Festival. And so a few years back, they started doing the Kings of Q barbecue contest, and it was it is a KCBS sanctioned barbecue event, but there's no whole hog component to it. And so this year, I joined the committee and was part of the group that brought
oh cool.
whole hog competition to that. And it's kind of a unique setup, so you can compete in the KCBS and the whole hog competition as a team,
Oh,
and the points can combine to make kind of a grand champion of sorts. So you could be named the King of Q. And so that is the
good.
trophy if you win to be the Kings of Q.
That's
And
cool.
so you get one of those, and then one of those stay with us in town. But all of us that were part of the committee this year, they gifted us with those.
Uh,
So I have
that
this statue.
it looks cool with the raccoon on top too, like with the
My,
raccoon above it over.
my dogs love that corner. They are always sniffing out the raccoon and the hog there.
Thank you, Michael, for taking the time. All right,
Right,
take care.
bro.
Bye.